Tokenized funds in the Cayman Islands. Last week, the Cayman Islands welcomed an influx of professionals in the digital asset space for its inaugural Cayman Crypto Week. As a jurisdiction at the forefront of innovative structuring for the digital asset space, this event was testament to the strength of the offering and experience of the professionals based here and the increasing institutionalization of crypto. Tokenized funds were the talk of the town, and unsurprisingly so, given the aptly timed draft legislative updates published in early February, heralding a clear regulatory framework for tokenized funds set up in the Cayman Islands. What exactly is a tokenized fund? To add context, let's briefly summarize a traditional fund, an investment vehicle pooling capital from a number of investors. Investors typically will hold their interests in the fund by subscribing for shares in the fund vehicle, in the case of a company, limited partnership interests, in the case of a limited partnership, or membership interests, in the case of an LLC. The concept of a tokenized fund, fundamentally, is an investment fund which allows investors to subscribe for interests in the fund by acquiring tokens on a blockchain. The fund would mint and send tokens to an investor who has successfully subscribed for fund interests and sent capital to the fund, usually via a smart contract. Conceptually, in the ideal of a tokenized fund, the tokens issued by the fund vehicle would be the sole representation of fund interests. Investors would not need to hold shares or other forms of interest, and the fund would operate entirely on-chain. In practice, due to other requirements and regulations applicable to operating an investment fund, as well as investor readiness, for now the most typical tokenized fund would issue tokens which represent/mirror the more traditional shares which are also issued. While investors in such a fund will likely consider the tokens to be the representation of their ownership interest in the fund, in reality there would be a conventional share register behind the scenes as well, which would reflect the ownership of those shares mirrored by the tokens. The Cayman Islands framework and proposed changes. Tokenized funds are not new in Cayman or the offshore world generally, and many prominent tokenized funds already operate in Cayman. That said, many such funds to date have been set up within the constraints of frameworks designed for traditional funds, with solutions to issues raised by tokenization being developed to fit without a clear framework or certainty as to expectations of the regulator. The proposed legislative changes, once in force, will provide a definitive and clear framework allowing for certainty in setting up in Cayman, boosting confidence for both managers and investors. Critically, for offering certainty for tokenized fund launches in Cayman, the issuance, creation, sale, to transfer or other disposition of tokenized equity or investment interests by regulated private and mutual funds will not constitute the issuance of virtual assets under the Virtual Assets Service Providers Act and will therefore not be a regulated activity under that Act. The changes add clarifications and additional requirements specific to digital tokens to the existing funds regime. The key operational requirements and considerations to comply with the licensing regime as tokenized funds formed in the Cayman Islands are set out below. Comprehensive token records and availability to the Cayman Islands Monetary Authority, CIMA. Tokenized funds must obtain and securely maintain all records of the issuance, creation, sale, transfer and ownership of tokenized interests, including any additional data CIMA may require, and make them available within periods specified by CIMA. For mutual funds, licensed administrators must be satisfied these records exist and are accessible. For private funds, this is framed as a registration stage and ongoing obligation. Annual operator confirmation. The operator must confirm to CIMA annually that all token-related records have been properly kept and maintained in compliance with the relevant Act. Transfer approvals. A tokenized equity/investment interest is only transferable with the operator's approval in accordance with the offering document. Offering document disclosure and mitigation. Token-specific risks, including at least cybersecurity and transferability risks, plus any additional risks identified by SEMA, must be disclosed, and the offering document must explain how those risks are addressed or mitigated for investors. SEMA power to set token characteristics. SEMA may impose specific restrictions on the characteristics of the digital tokens representing fund interests, and the fund must ensure compliance with any such restrictions. Periodic reporting. Tokenized funds must comply with any periodic reporting requirements that SEMA specifies under the Acts. Supervisory reach, technology and transactions. CMR's supervision is expressly extended to inspections of the underlying technology and token transactions for tokenized funds, in addition to its existing powers. References to the Mutual Funds Amendment Bill 2026, the Private Funds Amendment Bill 2026, and the Virtual Asset Service Providers Amendment. Bill 2026. Will tokenizing funds really enhance liquidity? One of the major benefits often touted in discussion of tokenized funds is that the ability to transfer or redeem tokens at any time, on-chain, will allow for instant liquidity pools. This can absolutely be true to a certain extent. However, it is not an absolute. In a fund operating a highly liquid strategy anyway, for example, money market funds, MMF, which have been one of the most prominent strategies managers have sought to tokenize to date, then it is true that the distributed ledger technology on which tokens are held and transferred can allow more constant liquidity. For example, an investor could redeem interests in a tokenized MMF for equal value of, for example, USDC over weekends and evenings through operation of smart contracts. In reality, though, this 24/7 liquidity is only possible due to the liquid nature of the underlying investments. In funds operating less liquid strategies, the enhanced liquidity would theoretically come from easier access to a secondary market, so that investors can easily transfer their fund interest to other prospective investors, thereby liquidizing their interest. While the ease of transfer will be enhanced by tokenization, all investors in a tokenized fund will be subject to the same investor suitability and know your customer requirements as those in a traditional fund. In practice, this means that for investor A to transfer to investor B would also need to be known to the fund in advance and have demonstrated that they meet all requirements and have provided all KYC information. This premise is embedded in the Cayman framework for tokenized funds, in the requirement for the fund to approve all transfers. The typical approach is for tokenized funds to maintain a whitelist of approved investors, so that transfers to those already pre-approved as investors, and certainly to other existing investors, can be made without delay or additional steps. This may therefore allow for some increased liquidity. However, the extent of this will very much be dependent on the whitelisted pool of investors who have already completed KYC screenings and satisfy investor suitability requirements. What about other benefits? There are a number of other potential benefits of tokenizing funds often discussed, including broadening access to high-value asset classes, such as real estate. Increased transparency and ease of audit, a benefit not unique to tokenizing funds. Blockchain technology offers transfer/transaction history in live time and with reduced risk of fraud. Operational efficiencies through automated onboarding, transfer, and redemption processes. Tokenizing the future. While certain aspects of the potential benefits are very much tangible now, others will become more apparent as the infrastructure needed to support these structures grows, better achieving the efficiencies promised by this sector evolution for the benefit of managers and investors alike. In bringing in much-needed regulatory clarity, the Cayman Islands government has ensured that Cayman will continue to lead the way as the funds market evolves, to realize the benefits promised and be the jurisdiction at the forefront of the tokenized fund movement.